That's something I don't really know very much about, but I thought it'd be an interesting topic. The topic for today is eugenics and miscegenation. The term eugenics is, from Wikipedia, defined as the study and practice of selective breeding applied to humans. The term miscegenation refers to the mixing of different racial groups through marriage or cohabitation, and it's a word that's been used since the 19th century, and it's kind of an offensive old-timey word because it's linked to miscegenation laws. That is legislation which forbids racial mixing. After the Holocaust, one would think that the idea of holding up racial purity as a standard and a thing to go for would be quite unpopular considering the devastating effects those philosophies had on Europe. But surprisingly enough, the United States especially had anti-miscegenation laws in many states all the way up until 1967. That's right, 1967. This is an advertisement from 1967. Look at that. Here is a map of the United States taken from Wikipedia showing anti-miscegenation laws. The gray ones never had any passed. The green ones were the earliest to remove their anti-miscegenation laws. That would be the ones that were before 1887. The yellow ones were repealed between 1948 and 1967, and the red ones were the last ones, that big red thing down in the south, where anti-miscegenation laws were not repealed until the 12th of June 1967. You might ask, what is racial mixing anyway? I mean, does that mean it's not okay to mix, or what constitutes a race, right? Can a Pole marry a, Slovak? Can a German marry a Lithuanian? And I guess the assumption is that there are actually only two races in this world. That is whites and people who are not whites, which is kind of a bizarre way of looking at the world. But that is exactly the way these laws went, and based on from state to state, it would be defined in a different way. So the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 is the real famous one, with a eugenics thing as well as so not only did they have laws against miscegenation, but they also had forced sterilization of certain groups. That would be the feeble-minded, insane, idiotic, imbecile, or the epileptic, to use their language. Now, let me see if I can find on here what the rules were. Okay, so if you go to some of these states and look at their specific laws, you can see, for example, Arizona, their miscegenation law was repealed in 1962, and they had a law banning blacks, Asians, Filipinos, and Indians from marrying whites. So Filipinos or Malay or Indians, that is Hindus in their language, were added to the list of races in 1931 there as interpreted by the Supreme Court of Arizona. The law prohibited persons of mixed racial heritage from marrying anyone. California, their law was repealed it was passed in 1850 and repealed again in 1948. And it was a law against blacks, Asians, and Filipinos marrying whites. Colorado was pretty cut and dried. It was just blacks versus whites. Idaho included Native Americans and Asians in the law against mixed cohabitation. They finally repealed that law in 1959. Notice these are pretty late dates. You wouldn't expect this to be going on so late. Maryland, 1967, blacks couldn't marry whites. Utah, 1963, it was was finally repealed, and Virginia had a incredible, incredibly intense one. They had a previous anti-miscegenation law that was made incredibly severe by the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, and they were also not repealed until 1967. There, that actually made it a felony for a mixed marriage, and the laws. Okay, so they had the two laws: the compulsory sterilization and the anti-miscegenation law, which were implementations of a guy by the name of Harry Laughlin. Anyway, his model of eugenical sterilization law, published 2 years earlier in 1922. The Sterilization Act was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in the case Buck versus Bell in 1927. This had appealed the order for compulsory sterilization of Carrie Buck, an inmate in the Virginia colony for epileptics. It's worth noting that in 1979, the Supreme Court finally repealed the Sterilization Act, and in 2001, they passed a bill to express the Assembly's profound regret in its role in the eugenics movement. And in 2002, someone by the name of Governor Mark Warner issued a statement expressing profound regret for the Commonwealth's goal in the eugenics movement, specifically naming Virginia's 1924 Compulsory Sterilization Act. Anyway, I don't really know how much more I have to say about this. I don't know a lot about it, but I just thought I'd chat a little bit and read a little bit off of Wikipedia, just because it seems like when we think of racial purity laws, we always think of like the Nuremberg laws, or we think of apartheid laws in South Africa, which until in 1950 even was what did they call it? The Immorality Act, which made it a criminal offense for sex between races. By the way, that one was repealed in 1985, so even later than the American ones. But yeah, we have our own kind of Nuremberg laws of racial purity or race disgrace, or whatever you want to call, or whatever they called it. Anyway, that's all.